What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. We are motoring ahead towards this Thursday night football game. It is not terribly far away. And obviously, there's a scenario where that game ends up not mattering for the Seahawks at all. But there's also a scenario where it does matter. So, either way, I'm going to be sitting down in front of that game in a couple days, excited to see my team play and hoping that things go well. And I know a lot of you guys out there are going to be joining me in that. And look, at the end of the day, I root for the Seattle Seahawks. I want them to win, and I don't want them to lose. And celebrating individual accomplishments is something that I think has a time and place. And I don't know if right now is the time or place for it because the Seahawks they're an okay team, right? They're decent, they're passable. They win more than they lose. They're probably going to win more games than they lose this year again. But there's work that needs to be done to get them to that next level. And right now, the odds are not in their favor to even make the postseason in a league where 14 out of 32 teams make it. So I can't say that we're particularly happy with that. And that's what matters at the end of the day, right? We don't root for players to put up stats. We root for them to contribute to wins. But I do want to take one video here to celebrate something really cool that is likely to happen over the next couple of games concerning one particular player that I think maybe more than anyone else on this team deserves unmitigated praise for their work in the 2024 season. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, there's there's a lot going right with this guy right now. He has been playing at a high level game after game after game now for what feels like about 2 months. And it may not result in this team having a good offense. It may not result in this team even making the playoffs. But for several games now, he's clearly doing what he can. And that is something worth appreciating. So let's take a look at some stuff here. And before I get to the big picture, I do want to say something here. This, with everything I'm going to say later in this video, this guy was downright quiet early in the season. This guy was downright forgettable. There were times where you could barely even notice he was out there for the first 2 months of the year. Like, look at all these games early in the season. I got the game log up here. I'll zoom in a little bit. Like, look at all these games where he's just another guy out there. He could be anybody. He could be Malik Washington, and you wouldn't notice. He had a big game in New England in week 2, but other than that, everything here is just kind of like okay. And then November hits, and he just explodes out of nowhere. So keep in mind that this is really, we're talking about a half season of mediocre play and then a half season of Herculean play. So if anything, in the right situation, this guy could come back next year and be even better than this. But just looking at his receiving stats, I know he has some rushing stats, but not looking at that right now. This guy's sitting at 93 catches on the season. And that number is significant because he is on the cusp of breaking the all-time Seattle Seahawks franchise record. Currently held by Tyler Lockett at exactly 100 from the 2020 season. He's currently in 4th place, behind Baldwin and Engram by 1 catch, and he's behind Lockett by 7 catches. He has a chance of getting there this upcoming week. And by the way, I know some people are going to say, well, JSN gets to play 17 games. Lockett only got to play 16. Well, if JSN manages 8 catches in this upcoming Bears game, which is within his reach, he gets there in 16 games. So if he plays the next 2 games, he will almost certainly break the 100. It's not as meaningful if he doesn't do it in the next game, admittedly, but he has a chance to do it even without that qualifier, even without that caveat. So that is a pretty significant record. The Seahawks are a franchise that has a lot of very good receivers in their franchise history. They've had some players put together really good seasons. Now, I understand that 100 catches is probably on the lower end for a single season leader for a franchise, but the fact that JSN is almost certainly going to find his way to 100 catches in a season where he was anonymous for about half of it is remarkable. And he is probably, well, I don't want to say probably, but possibly going to break a pretty meaningful franchise record. And that's not even the full picture of it. He's also just shy of 1,100 yards, 1,089. If you sort by yards on this chart, you can see that the all-time franchise record is DK Metcalf with 1,303. So JSN is currently 214 yards short. Now, he's probably going to need 2 games to have a chance at passing that, right? I seriously doubt he's going to have 200 plus receiving yards against the Bears, but he certainly could pass it. If he averages 107 receiving yards a game for the next 2 games, which is within the realm of possibility, he will break Metcalf's record. Now, targets, I mean, I don't know if this is something even worth celebrating, but it's also worth noting, I guess. He's got 126 targets on the season. The all-time Seahawks record is 156 from Darrell Jackson in 2004. I guess if he averages 15 targets a game over the next 2 games, he ties that. I don't think I want him to. I think that would probably be a bit of a negative thing to have a receiver getting targeted that much, because you want to spread the ball around, especially when it comes to somebody like a JSN who is a slot receiver. But it is certainly worth noting that technically that is within his reach. Barely. And I seriously doubt he gets there. And I don't even know if I want him to get there, but these are some significant franchise records that could fall. And think about where we were 2 months ago. Going into October, JSN was playing like he was just another slot receiver in the NFL. The kind of guy that you could find pretty much anywhere. He wasn't dropping a lot of passes, but he was dropping enough passes to where it was clearly negatively impacting his value as a player. He was having games where he just looked completely invisible. He was having games where he could have been any random slot receiver you pick up in free agency after the draft, like a John Ursua. There were definitely some moments where this was starting to get a little bit scary. And I remember, some people point this out, that after he dropped that pass against the Rams on 3rd down that bounced up into a defender for an interception, I even said, I think I said it on X. Yeah, I did say it on X. I was like, okay, what is going on here? What are we doing? Like, we took this guy in the 1st round, and what's he doing that any random guy you could pick in the 4th or 5th round can't do? And, 2023, he was okay, but he was 21. I had no problem writing that off. He's competing with catches for with Metcalf and Lockett. He's in an offense that is probably not suited to his abilities. Like, there was a lot going on in 2023 that I understood, but 2024, you bring in a new offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, and now I think we have a pretty good idea of Ryan Grubb just not being that good of a player. But it was definitely, there was definitely a moment where I was concerned that, hey, maybe this JSN guy just isn't it. Maybe he's just not special. Maybe he's just another dude. And like, within 20 minutes of me tweeting that out, he just decided, no more. I'm gonna be the player that everybody hoped I would be when I got drafted. And that's awesome. That's been great. Nothing but appreciative of that. And in a season where Seahawks fans can't really agree on anything, we can't agree. Maybe we can agree mostly on McDonald, although I do see some people wondering. We can't agree on Geno. We can't agree on Metcalf. We can't agree on Walker or Charbonnet or the offensive. Well, actually, we pretty much agree on the offensive line. Can't agree on, Witherspoon. Can't agree on Woolen. Can't agree on anything. Can't agree on Grubb. JSN we can all agree on. Like, this has become a very, very special player as far as the kind of player that he is, right? I'm not going to put him in the same sentence as Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. I think those guys are clearly better than him. But for what he is, a slot receiver, he is making an argument to be in the same conversation as the best of them, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even maybe to a certain extent, I don't know if I want to go this far, but maybe a CeeDee Lamb. So, good chance he breaks a record, and it's a good record to break, and I hope he does it. I hope he does it at this point. I know it's Lockett's record, and I know that Lockett's going to have to watch his record get broken, but I don't think he's going to be too torn up about it. Lockett's had a good career. Lockett's done a lot of good things. I don't think he'll be particularly hurt if he loses his yardage record in the next, or excuse me, reception record in the next couple of weeks. So we're celebrating JSN for a minute here, and there's some stuff that this Seattle Seahawks team needs to carry forward. He is certainly one of them. I think there's some other stuff that needs to be carried forward as well. And look, whoever the next OC is, because I don't think Grubb's coming back next year anymore. I think that Grubb is DOA at this point. I hope it's somebody that really understands how to use him, because if there's one thing good about Grubb, and this is probably the only thing that I think is good, it's that he has an understanding of how to use them that Waldron didn't have. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Shout out JSN. Credit where credit is due. He's toasting it right now.